Yes, thank you so much. What a great crowd. What a beautiful day. This is what an absolutely gorgeous setting. Thank you. Thank you for all of you for coming out and for being here. How did we do at the debate last night? What did you think? Well, I tell you, I felt very, very good last night up there, and I felt for a while, I have to tell you, that I should have been selling popcorn for a while because, you know, the two candidates out there going at each other, which just really points out the fact is we need to make this campaign against the President of the United States about the worst president this country has ever seen, Barack Obama. And in order to do that, then we have to have a candidate who is not going to be the issue in the campaign. We have to have a candidate who stands proudly, consistently, aggressively, forcefully for the values that made this country the greatest country in the history of the world. And the issues in this campaign have to be the issues. They can't be about, well, the past of any of the other candidates. They can't be about a lot of questions surrounding their character or surrounding their positions on issues. It can't be about, you know, erratic things that people might do or say or flip-flops. It's got to be about the issues in this campaign. They are just too important. It is just too important in our country's history. This is the most, I know we have some young kids here, but I'm sure there's maybe one or two seniors here and I don't care how old you are. This is the most important election in your lifetime. And I often say this is the most important election since the election of 1860. And the election of 1860, if you go back and look at history, prior to 1860, the most common way to refer to the United States was these United States. These United States. A collection of states. After the Civil War, the most common way, and to this day, as the United States. A country as opposed to a collection of states. And so the issue in that was what we were going to be. The same thing is true here. I announced for president back in June of this year after a lot of thought. Karen and I have been married 21 years. We have 7 children that we're raising. We have a little boy named Gabriel in heaven. And we have children ages 20 to 3 at the time. And I have to tell you, it was not necessarily the thing that popped in my mind. Gee, maybe I should go out with 7 kids at home. We're homeschooling too. We got a couple going to college. Maybe I should go out and run for president. When you see my tax return, you will note that I do not have the riches that other people have in this race. And I served 16 years in Congress, raising children with 2 homes, one in Pennsylvania, one in Washington, so I could be with my family all the time. And it was a decision that was not an easy decision for me to make. I knew I wouldn't have any personal money to put into this, that I would have to go out and just be about ideas and try to paint a positive vision for our country and motivate people and remind us, as Ronald Reagan did so very well, about who America is, what we stand for, why we are the greatest country in the history of the world. Well, I decided when Karen and I sat down and we prayed about it over the kitchen table and with our friends, I have to tell you, I'll be honest with you, other than my daughter Sarah Maria, who was 13 at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of people encouraging me to run for president. It's not like there was this huge wave out there, hey, we want Rick to run for president. But I saw and I've got to say, take my hat off to the Tea Party. I saw what was going on in this country like millions of Americans did. That this country, which has been the beacon of hope for the world, that shining city on the hill that we talk about, was a country that was going through a radical transformation under the leadership of Barack Obama. A man who sees America fundamentally differently than the people here, than frankly our founders did and for generations of Americans did. He wants to remake America into an image of something that is, in my opinion, un-American. And so we prayed about it, and we decided that we were called to do this. People asked me for a long time, are you running for president? And I said, no, I'm walking. And I really was. I was trying to walk and discern what path I should take. Trying to see whether really this, are you sure you want us to do this? Given the circumstances we were in. And we made the decision that to be a good husband and father, which I am called to be, that the best way I could do that at this point in time in our country's history was to do what so many others do, which is to step away and sacrifice, step away from your family and go out on the road and make the case for an America that I want my children and your children and grandchildren to grow up in. So I went to this little town. I thought about, well, where do you announce for president? I mean, anybody ever thought about it? I never thought about it. So I was thinking, well, all right, why am I doing this? And maybe that should be the place that we should go that sort of explains that. And so I went to this little town, about 20 miles down the road from where my grandfather came to this country. He came to this country in 1925. He came to little town in northern Somerset County outside of Johnstown, Pennsylvania. A little town called Carpenter's Park. And it was a company town. It was a coal town, deep mines. And he came to this country because he wanted to leave fascist Italy. He wanted to come to a country that wasn't going to tell him what to do, didn't have the government in charge of everything. He wanted to come to a country that didn't have government benefits, but they had the greatest benefit, freedom and opportunity. That's what he came to America for. He wanted to come to a country that believed in him and his ability to be able to provide for himself and to raise his family consistent with his faith and his values, and be able to grow and prosper here in America. I remember telling the story the other day about, and this was always in my mind as I went to Somerset, was the time that I went, the first time I ever saw someone who had died was my grandfather. And I went to his viewing, and I knelt down next to his casket, and right at eye level, I could see my grandfather's hands folded on his chest. He had enormous hands, big, thick, meaty, working man hands. He had those hands because he worked in the coal mines from 1927 to 1958 till he was 72 years old, digging coal in a deep mine. He hunched over because he was in those mines, and he was hunched over in the mines, and he was bent over as I knew him as an older man. He had black lung. He had about everything you could have if you worked in the mines for all the years that he worked in those mines. And I kept looking at those hands and being thankful for him for what he did in clawing his way for my freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, each and every one of us has a grandfather or a great-grandfather or someone, maybe even a dad or a mom, who clawed their way for freedom for us. Because they were given the opportunity, as meager as it was, and it was meager, as meager as it was for my grandfather to grow up in this little coal town and to finally one day be able to own his own home. It was right across the street, right across the creek, as we called it, the creek from the mouth of a coal mine, where the train tracks ran right through the backyard, but it was his house. And I'll never forget going to that house and the pride he had, of the little garden he had. He made his plot. He had his opportunity because America believed in him. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a president of the United States that doesn't see America like that anymore. We have a president of the United States who doesn't see America as a great country being built by the Pete Santorums who worked and slaved to be able to provide so his child, my dad, could have an education, which he did. He went off to war in World War II and served there, and thanks to the GI Bill was able to go to college. And within a generation, he could have one of his grandchildren run for President of the United States. That's the greatness of America. Did my grandfather struggle? You bet he did. Did he go through tremendous hardship? Yes, he did. Did he lose jobs? Yes, he did. Did he have a little business that he tried and failed? Yes, he did. But he built character that he instilled in his children, and they instilled in their children. They understood. My dad, when I was growing up, if I heard the word work, every other sentence was hard work. Work, work. That's what it's all about. Perspiration. Make it happen. Believe in yourself. Take responsibility for yourself. This is what makes America different. I can tell you, I've been back and I've visited my cousins. My grandfather was one of 8 children. All of my relatives, my grandmother's relatives, they all lived back in Italy. They never came. They didn't move. And when I go back there and I visit them, they are nothing like my grandparents, my dad, and my relatives here in this, and there's nothing like them. They're very, very happy being ruled. They're very happy having a welfare state. Socialist, European socialist kind of, but it's just what they know. It's what they knew. They didn't want to leave to be different. America is different. President Obama wants to make us like a European welfare state. But we left, your ancestors left those European welfare states and other countries around the world because they didn't want that. You have a chance right here in Florida to speak loudly and boldly. You have an opportunity here in Florida. This is, there's no more important state politically than the state of Florida in a general election, right? I mean, you guys are it. You're the crown jewel. Well, you have an opportunity now as Republicans in a primary. You moved your primary up. You took a hit with delegates because you wanted to have a say in the early part. Well, let's look at your choices. Who's the best person to go up against Barack Obama? Who has the best narrative to go up against Barack Obama? Who's the best person who has the strongest plan to get this country growing for everyone in America? The president's going to give his State of the Union address tonight. I'll let you go. Go ahead. And what is the State of the Union?
Mess.
Oh, you're going to hear a bunch of flowery rhetoric and all this stuff about all the things he's done. But what he's done is he's grown the tax burden on the American public through Obamacare and through Dodd-Frank and through other bills. He's grown the size and scale of government to an unprecedented level. He's grown the deficit in this country to absolutely immoral lengths. He has increased the debt of this country to where now the debt equals the entire size of the economy. He has lowered our bond rating. He has had double-digit unemployment for the first time in decades in this country. He has governed over a housing market that he's continued to allow to decline and decay because he won't use free market principles to turn it around. This is a president who bailed out Wall Street, who's trying to take over the healthcare system, who's taken over the banking system, took over the student loan system, took over the auto companies. This is the most activist, big government, leftist president that's ever served in this country. And we need someone who is a nice, stark, clear contrast. Right? We have to make the race about Obamacare number one. Why? Because Obamacare, the whole purpose of the Tea Party came out of the Wall Street bailouts, where government, Republicans and Democrats, went together and said, we will abandon our free market principles. Because our friends from Goldman Sachs in both parties said, oh, you need to bail us out. You can't live without us. You can't let us fail. Oh, you can let Main Street fail. You can let manufacturers fail. You can let every other sector of the economy fail. You just can't let us fail. And we bought it. Well, not all of us bought it. All of us understood that capitalism was Mitt Romney keeps talking about, success and failure. And that failure is part of capitalism, part of anybody's life. We're going to have successes and failures. And when we fail and we make mistakes, we learn from those mistakes. We don't get compensated and made whole because of those mistakes from people who didn't make mistakes, the American taxpayer. The Tea Party recognized this. And they started, not the Tea Party, but people across this country recognized this. And when Obama was elected and he put forth this big government stimulus package and started talking about cap and trade and health care, legions of people started to come together because they understood our fundamental freedoms were at stake. That government had gone that one last straw that broke the camel's back. That now every single American, whether it was Obamacare or whether it was cap and trade, was going to be controlled, the business as well as the individual, by the federal government and be dependent upon them for their very lives. Margaret Thatcher, who's now been lionized in this recent movie, when she left the prime ministership of England right after the time that she served with Ronald Reagan, she said that she was never able to do for England what Reagan did for America. And what did Reagan do? Reagan reminded us who we are. Reagan reminded us of his story, our story of America. Not the way those on the left and the educational elite establishment want to rewrite history, but the real history of what made America the greatest country in the history of the world. He reminded us of God-given rights in our Declaration of Independence. He reminded us of the sanctity of every single life in America. He reminded us of liberty to pursue not happiness in the way that we understand it today, but he understood at the time of our founders and our writers that happiness was not enjoyment and pleasure. Go back and read the dictionary definition of happiness at the time of our founders. Read our writings from our founders. Happiness was a substitute. They had property in there. But they realized it was something bigger, greater, grander. And what was that? The pursuit of doing what you ought to do. Right? God gives you rights, and what comes with those rights? Responsibilities to do what God calls you to do, what you ought to do. That's what America's about. This moral enterprise that says you have God-given rights to go out and serve, to provide for yourself, your family, your community, be your brother's keeper, and build a great and just society from the bottom up. This is the uniqueness of America. This is who we are. This is what made us different. This is what Alexis de Tocqueville wrote about in the 1830s when he came and saw America as this society being built, one family, one community, one church at a time. And we transformed the world. We forget how transformative America has been as we are now being sung this siren song from Barack Obama that he will take care of you, that he will do for you what you can. In fact, you can't be trusted anymore with freedom. You can't be trusted with making healthcare decisions or financial decisions, or even what kind of car you're going to buy. You're going to be told how many miles to the gallon it's going to be, how heavy it's going to be. All these things are now going to be told to you by the government because we can't trust you. That's Barack Obama's view of America, the elites ruling from on high, King George III reincarnated, telling us what rights we have and who can spread those rights around. But that's not what Reagan believed. That's not what your ancestors believed. That's not in your DNA. You have a very different America. How can you go to Washington, D.C. and get things done? I think the vast majority of Americans are tired of a president who seeks to gain power by dividing America into one group against another group. American. I could go to France and spend the next 50 years of my life in France and never be a Frenchman. Because that's not what being an American is. It's not an ethnicity. It's not a race. It's not a creed. Well, in a sense, it is a creed, but it's not a religious creed. It's a secular creed of a set of values that makes us who we are. And when you buy into those values, then you become an American. We need to remind us who we are and then start to refashion America using what made America great, which is looking at a healthcare system and saying, no, government-run, mandated healthcare, that everybody has to buy the insurance that the government says, and here's how much taxes you're going to pay, and here's how much we're going to pay the doctors, and here are the benefits you're going to get, and here are the exchanges you're going to get it in, and here's what... This is what we left. This is what your ancestors left. But unfortunately, we have 2 of 3 candidates who were up on that stage with me last night who signed off on this. We have 2 of the 3 candidates who signed off on bailing out Wall Street. We have 2 of the 3 candidates who signed off on global warming and a carbon cap, and in some cases, cap and trade proposal. The very issues that got the Tea Party exercised and out into the streets, we're now going to potentially run 1 of 2 candidates who agreed with the people they were protesting against. How is that the contrast that we need? How is that going to motivate us? How is that going to set a vision for America that shows any sense of consistency? Ladies and gentlemen, you have a big role to play here. The national media has propped up, as they have in the past, 2 candidates for your choosing. And they've continued to do it. It's always 2 candidates. It's always 2 candidates that they feel comfortable promoting. Well, you here in Florida, you speak loudly in election time. Speak loudly at this election time.